This is a story about how the Appalachian people, on the most part, were raised in these old mountains, in these countryside and valleys. And it don't matter if you're from the city, and I visited these big cities, even had to live there as a young boy. And I've seen this ocean, the beauty of it, the vastness. And its wonders, and it just seems like it never ends, these great oceans. But here are my oceans. This is what's always calling me, no matter where I go. This is what I want to see around me, and it just beckons me to enter. And these great valleys in between these mountains, so beautiful. But I'm going to share with you of how the people, for the most part, was raised in these Appalachian Mountains. The Appalachians. They're such a remote place in some areas. But this kind of raising that I'm about to share with you, if you're not from these mountains, you'll never understand. But this is how people was raised through generations in these mountains. Now here's a picture I'll share with you of my great-grandfather, his family, and his father. Scots and Cherokee mixed. And they've been in these mountains for 2.5 centuries. 2.5 centuries. Now the main part in these mountains is family is everything. And they had big families back in these mountains. Back in them days, especially on these farms, big families you can see here. And like I said, family was everything. They learned from each other, they worked together, and they passed it on to their children. And it didn't matter in these mountains, you live in a mining camp, growed up in them, hard life. This was the only way a lot of people had to support their family, working in the mines, or working on these farms, sharecropping, or just had your own land. And some of them raised cattle, corn, whatever, on these farms, but this is their way of life in these mountains. And they loved the views here, and we respected the wildlife. Such beautiful country. And anywhere you go down these Appalachians, the northern end, the southern end, you see stuff like this, old country farms, scattered all up and down these Appalachians. And up these hollers, West Virginia, Kentucky, Virginia, Tennessee. This is the way of life in these mountains. Some do better than others, and some don't. But that's the way it is in these mountains. And I can remember old times of my grandmother's house here. Growing up, how I was raised, what I was taught, what I can remember, and I know you can too. Precious memory of sitting around watching your grandmother in the kitchen, talking to you, telling you stories, teaching you things. Such precious time. And the family was everything now, and they always sat down and had meals together. That was a necessity. What everybody's doing, how their day was. And the kids took it for granted. They didn't know. I done the same thing. When you get old enough to know the difference, your elders is about gone. But when you start out early on these farms, stuff, you start what you can do to help out, to help the family. You start at an early age. Even the girls, they start at an early age, helping do things around the house. That's the way it was in these mountains. And I can remember seeing my grandmother, even my mom in the early days before they got a washing machine, scrubbing your clothes, and you didn't think nothing of it. But what a hard life. And back in them days, there wasn't no cell phone, no computer, no telephone. You're lucky just televisions are starting to come out. This is social media of the day, the mail. And I can remember us getting our first television way back. See, I'm a baby boomer, so I can remember this stuff. And we taught out, us boys was taught at a real early age how to hunt, how to use a firearm, how to clean it, how to shoot it, the safety of it, what to do, what not to do, how to hunt. And we learned this at an early age. And we learned all the game in these mountains, what they look like, how to hunt them, how to clean them, how to prepare them. And as you got older, you learned to hunt by yourself, to pass it on to your children. That's the way it is in these mountains, like it or not. And I can remember neighbors having pets, wild animals as pets, coons especially. And every once in a while, they'd have a doe with a bell around its neck. I can remember that growing up. And oh, how I can remember being with my uncle, my dad, learning how to camp, how to fish. Most precious time for me, being out in the wild, learning how to fish, what kind of fish it was, how to clean them, how to fish for them. But you never took more than what you really need, and you shared it. And when it come to school, it didn't matter if it's a small town school like this. You've learned a lot of stuff by the time you reach school. But you have to learn to get along with others. Of course, you had bullies. That's just the way life was, and you had to deal with it growing up. And out in the rural areas, they had little schools like this, 1, 2-room schoolhouses. But it didn't matter what school you went to back in them days. We all said a prayer first thing in the morning, read a verse out of the Bible, and said the pledge allegiance to the flag every morning. That was a routine every morning, and we respected that too. And yes, we had recess, good times at school, and you have bad times, but that's just going to school. And yes, they even had school buses back then. I can remember them riding them, especially when you got older and went to high school and stuff like that. But back on the farm, you always had chores to do every evening, no matter if you went to school. Even days or weekends, it didn't matter. You had stuff to do. And when you were little, you couldn't wait to get up on that tractor and do what Dad or your uncles, grandfather was doing, helping on the farm. Now, I remember them using these old mules and stuff, and they used them for a long time. But they was still being used, but they was slowly being replaced by the old tractor, the old workhorse of the day now. This is an old one. They're so sophisticated now, but they didn't cost an arm and a leg back then like they do now. And I've spent many a summer getting up hay, and then on other farms helping out, making a little extra cash, getting up hay, or getting in crop, getting in tobacco, hard work. But oh, how I love to run these fields. especially barefoot. We'd run all day long till you just wear yourself out. And we got to go down to the old country store every once in a while for Grandma or Mom. But it was usually just down at the end of the lane to Crossroads, like so many other places. And we'd cash in our old pop bottles we'd been saving or found along the road in the ditch. Go in the old country store, and there was just so much to choose from. I'd usually get an old moon pie and some RC cola, old Pop, while he was getting things for your grandmother you was getting, like cutting a pound of bologna to take back to the house. The good old days. Loved going to them old stores. And they treated you right, too. And I can remember you going to your first county fair around the areas. That was so fascinating, just to smell of popcorn, cotton candy. I can remember that so clear. But you learn at an early age what death is. You start seeing some of your elders die. You don't understand, but it don't take long to understand. And it's a sad time in your life. And it seems like the older you get, the more life starts taken away from you. That's a sad reality. But there wasn't nothing better sitting around an old campfire, listening to your uncles or your elders tell stories and their wisdom that they've learned over their years. But so many of them is gone now. But the most important thing you learn in life is who God is, who Jesus our Savior is, and going to church and reading the Holy Bible, God's Word. If you didn't learn nothing else, this is the most important thing I've ever learned. And so many people saved in these country churches and baptized every weekend down there at the local creek somewhere. God-fearing people. And I can remember a little old bitty boy, my dad. This is a picture of me and my dad. We going to church. Always. He was a firm believer. God bless him. And you learn, if you know the Lord and your elders left and they know the Lord, you're going to see him again. That's God's promise. And I'm looking forward to that. And I spent my summers as a small child going to vacation Bible school. I can remember that so well. This is an old picture. Sorry the way it looks, but this is an old picture of vacation Bible school. And I can remember too, having prayer meetings on Wednesday nights at different homes. We'd all pray together. I can remember that as a small child growing up. Never forget it. And we learned to take care of the less fortunate. See their needs, take care of them, give them shoes, clothes, food, whatever. That's part of being a good neighbor. And we tried to take care of our neighbors. And I can remember the family reunions. I can remember the church reunions so well. Good time. Precious time. Now, we growed up learnt that you didn't judge a person by their appearance, by the color of their skin, by their race. You judge a person by their character and who they are. You can't judge a person by their looks. We learned that a long time ago. And when you deal with somebody, you looked them right in the eye, you shook their hands, and your word was good as gold. If you broke your word, nobody would fool with you anymore. Now these old people, our elders, they had so much wisdom. Yes, they didn't have college education. Some of them couldn't read or write, but they had more wisdom than any college could ever teach them. So I just like to share this stuff with you. I can remember sitting in there many a morning watching my grandma fire that old coal stove up, watching her fire it up, fixing me a pan of taters or frying me something. I miss them days so bad as she's talking to me. Now this is how, for the most part, that we growed up in these Appalachian Mountains. Some youngins might not agree with me, but this is what I think I know was growed up. So I hope you enjoy these little stories. God bless every one of you, and I'll see you next time.